Mackey should be able to help us a little bit this week. I wouldn't say he's 100%, but I think he's good enough. He'll be able to help us out a little bit. He's getting better. Certainly the bye week will be good for him. Carter Milliron is going to be out as well. He hurt his knee. So, we have Hunter Sims, who snapped for us before, that'll be taking over the snapping duties. But other than that, there's really no change as far as, the rest of the guys. The ones that are supposed to be out will be out.
So as you went through practice this week, with the progress that Daniel made, does that allow you to do more than you did, or do you just have a better idea of what you need to be doing with Daniel in terms of play?
Well, I think what it does is it just gives you a comfort level that you can do what you need to do to try to move the ball, last week we ran it really effectively. We just got behind the sticks at times, but he did a really good job of getting us back on track whenever, he had the opportunity to do that. So, I don't think it really changes what we're going to try to do. It's hard to sit here and say that, truthfully, it's not like you got one group that's all good, all ready to go. You got injuries up front and on the outside. So, we're just guys have to step up, and I know as cliche as it sounds, it's just that's what has to happen. We're going to go play and, we're going to put guys out there that are going to go compete really hard. And so, we got to figure out who's going to go play well for us in this new roles. The game plan to me stays the way it was. It gives you a little confidence, though, that he played a whole lot better. And saying that, hey, he had a couple drives there, 2 minute into half and a 2 minute into the game where he, really made some huge plays for us to get the ball down the field and operated really well. So, I don't know, it changes. I don't know that it means that you do more with him. I think he's worked really hard to be able to operate the way we want to. No one was more disappointed than him, probably in the way that, he didn't feel like he performed either. So he was hell bent and he was relentless to try to get himself playing better, playing the way that he knows he can.
I've heard you mention it Monday, and somebody we interviewed yesterday mentioned how the defense is a little different, a little unique that Marshall plays. Is it like Southern Miss was playing a few years ago, where they just blitz you on every play, and somebody was going to be real happy at the end of the play, or how would you classify it?
No, I don't. I don't think it's that. I think they're really aggressive. They do pressure quite a bit, but they got. It looks like the way their defense works, they've got quite a few guys that don't have pass coverage responsibilities. So if they think it's a run, they're down there and they're going, and they'll add to the pass protection and things like that because they really don't have pass responsibility, it doesn't look like. So it's just it looks like their coverages, they try to marry the coverages on the back end with the back end. They try to let the box players be the box players. But I think, Coach Gibson, he's been very successful as a defensive coordinator. And you can see the carryover from NC State to what he's doing here. He finds really creative ways to get extra hats in the box with those safeties and things like that. It's just a little bit unique in that they have so many people that play in different spots. It's almost like the D-line, all three of those guys, they play wherever. The linebackers, they can pull it on a string and they can play on the edge or in the box, and that's all three of them. The safeties are kind of the same a little bit. So it's unique. And I think it's really well put together, and you can tell like they're communicating what they've got on the back end. So I wouldn't say it was like Southern Miss a few years ago where it was, double cat on the first play. But there's a lot of it's an aggressive defense and they're downhill.
What does that look like in terms of getting y'all's guys prepared for that when there is that much of a different look that can come on any given snap defensively?
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, on the staff end of it, and our coaches have worked really hard to try to, get the looks that we think we're going to get, formationally and situationally. It takes a lot of coaching on the scout team to try to get those guys to understand what what these calls mean and what they're trying to do. So it takes a lot of work, organizationally. It's always nice when it's, where they're going to be every snap and you go out there and play, but these guys are a little different. So it just takes a lot of work to get there. But, our guys that play on the scout team do a great job every week, man. They work really hard to give us a great look. So it's a little bit challenging. It's a little more on the front end, really trying to figure out what they're doing and where we think they're trying to be, by, like I said, formation or situation.
Defensively for you guys, how have you been trying to emphasize to the defense about stopping the run to settle things down and get the ball back to the offense?
I mean, I think you just have to just keep hammering home, like that's what we've got to do, and that's the type of team that you have to stop the run, to be able to win football games. And I think it starts with good tackling. I mean, a 2-yard run turns into 8 yards. That doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is over the course of a game. So it's about tackling better, right? It's about the 2-yard gain needs to be a 2-yard gain. You know what I'm saying? And look, they're going to break the line of scrimmage. Well, you got to get on the ground right there. We had one in the game the other day. It goes from a TFL to a 26-yard gain. Those hurt. I mean, that's a behind the sticks negative play. Second and extra long type of deal, or it's an explosive for a first down in the red zone. So those are things that you got to tackle better first of all, and then I think the big thing is we got to make sure we're communicating effectively on the fits in the back end. I mean, everyone's trying to get the extra hat to the ball whenever you can, based on formation and motion and how they do things. We got to do a good job and communicate that where we know where the extra hat is, so we understand where we fit off of that and we're in the right spot. So it's just, again, I mean, you just have to overemphasize what you really want. And this week we always work tackling naturally, but this week it's been the premium, right? And everything that you do, it's all about that, and it's about making sure the fits are right. So it's I mean, I don't know there's like a magic solution to it. It's you get what you emphasize typically, and for us that's been all week, is we have got to stop the run. And if someone throws for 400 yards and beats you, well, okay, you tip your hat at the end of the day and say, well, it is what it is. But it feels so much worse to have someone run for 200 yards on you than have someone throw for 450 yards. I mean, just to be honest with you, I mean, it feels so much worse whenever you just can't stop it. So, we're gonna do what we got to do to get the run stopped.
You talked some last year, I guess, about that veteran group and the business-like approach they had coming back off of, highs and lows at times in the season. What have you seen from these guys so far, and just the way they come back on Mondays? Or
the work has been really good, and I think that's been the thing that's probably been the hardest part about all this is like, I think us starting slow on offense was a shocker for me. Just from what you see in practice, it just didn't translate early on. So it was very surprising. But the commitment to working and trying to get it fixed has been great the entire time. And that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about it a whole lot with our group and with our team. There's a lot of things going on right now that we can't control, and including what's happened in the past. There were a lot of things in those games that were in our control that we didn't do very well. But you have to move forward with the things that you can. And that's what we talk about every day. You got to turn the page, you got to move on to the next one. And, where we're at right now with some bodies that are down and stuff like that, it's about just trying to find a way to scratch out the win. And it's a 1-game season, and you're not worried about anything past this Saturday. It's about getting the best 11 that we can to go out there and go play the best that we can and go find a way to scratch it out. And the biggest thing I think is we just haven't played the complementary football that we did really well last year, and that's probably the hardest thing to really put your finger on. Understanding momentum plays, and when you have a chance to flip the momentum, and when you have a chance to really kind of take a lead, extend the lead, things like that. And we just haven't done a great job of that. The work has been really good week to week. And, I said that from the beginning. We have a really talented group. Now we've got some of them that are out right now, but we have a good group of kids that work really hard. We're going to continue to get better. It's just, you just kind of uphill a little bit with some of the things that are in front of you.
A lot of the penalties last week were aggressive. So how do you deal with that in practice? I mean,
well, some of it, to be honest with you, yeah, look, like holding penalties happen every now and then, things like that. The one that I could really live with was the illegal chop block. We got knocked off the block and we fell into the guy and cut him. I get what the official sees, all he sees is him diving and cutting him. So I get, but that was one that, we got bumped off a block, we tripped, we cut the guy. That's a complete accident. The holding penalties, a lot of it, holding is, there's a hold almost every play on the football field. We all know that, right? Offense and defense. The key to the whole thing is making sure that you're playing and you're blocking with really good technique, right? It's hands inside. It's moving your feet to stay in position. When you get called for holding is whenever your hands get outside the framework of your body, or you stop your feet, right, and you extend it and things like that. And then sometimes you got to know when to let go. And there was a couple of them the other day. One of them was, after the dang play, I mean, we picked up 12 yards. We got a holding penalty 9 yards down the field, so we had to play 1st and 11. You know what I mean? Like, it was way down the field, kind of at the end of it. You got to just be smart sometimes and know when you got to fold them. And you coach it. I don't know another way to say it. You know, every opportunity you get and you see it, you got to coach it. You got to say, hey, this is how you get a holding penalty. You're not moving your feet, or your hands are out. Your hands are wide. You know, it's just, you got to keep coaching it. I mean, you know, it comes down to competitive discipline too. You know, and understanding, like, hey, you know, we say it all the time, you know, finish with a shove, right? I mean, whenever you finish with an open hand shove at the end of the play, and there's no chance to get called for holding. So, you know, you just got to keep coaching it. And like I say, I mean, there's a technical reason for things going wrong, you know, with everything you do. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago we had a fumbling problem, right? And it's not a fumbling problem, you have a technical problem, and you got to coach the technical problems to get it fixed. You know, it's the same thing right now with that. Same thing with tackling. You know, you drop your head, you don't run your feet, you don't wrap up, you know, you don't bring your feet when you wrap up. You know, all those things go into being a good tackler, keeping your leverage, right? You know, there's so many things that go into it. You just got to coach it, every freaking detail of it. And we got to coach it better, because obviously we're not getting what we want. So we got to keep coaching it better, and we got to keep harping on it and keep demanding it.
The receivers that Rob and Shelton are out. So do the guys who have been playing play more time, or do you play more guys?
Well, I think, you know, the guys, you know, I think Charles Robertson, I know he hadn't had a bunch of catches or anything this year, but he's been playing really good without the ball. You know, expect him to play a lot more. He's been practicing really well. You know, he's a veteran player who's played a lot, you know, so I think you feel a lot better about him getting more snaps, right? You know, at age, Jaden Johnson will play more. He won't split as much time. Raji will probably continue in a similar role, you know, playing what he's been. You know, Trent Chaney will be up this week to play maybe a little bit, you know, have a possibility in there to play. You know, he's had a good week of practice. Landon Strother, you know, moves into a role where he's got an opportunity to play a little bit more. He's been playing a little bit every game, but play a little more. You know, at X, I think is kind of where, you know, I think you're gonna have to kind of roll by committee a little bit at X. You know, I mean, Kadarius and Landon and you know, and Dale Martin, we moved him to X this week. You know, he's a guy that, you know, when he gets in the game and gets an opportunity, he plays well. So, you know, he's got an opportunity here. So, you know, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Maybe some of the guys that have played play more. But naturally, I do think you got to prepare to play some guys who haven't played much too.
Close games, obviously the Rice game and then Eastern Michigan have kind of been the bugaboo for you guys. Like, how much is that not going into the game where you're like, if we're in a close game, what do we do to not lose it? But like, what small details are you more focused on even more, especially now that you're in conference play?
Well, what I would tell you is this: I think we have to expect everyone to be close from here on out. I think that's the way we're gonna have to play. You know, we're gonna have to play really good defense. We're gonna have to play really smart on offense. We're gonna have to flip the field on special teams. Like, we're gonna have to grind them out. So, you know, we have to kind of embrace that close game part of it. You know, and that's just what it is. I think when you do have a small lead, you know, one possession lead in the fourth quarter, you know, what we did last year so well was we extended that one possession lead into two, right? And that ended up putting the games away. Where in the past we've had, you know, the majority of our losses have been one possession, right? So in the past, that's been a little bit of a thing. You're relying on chance a little bit, right? When you allow it to be that close. So when you do have the one possession lead, you got to try to turn it into two late in the game to put it out of reach. But no, we're gonna have to embrace that. That's the way we're gonna have to win here. And we're gonna have to, you know, we're gonna have to just do things down the stretch, right? Where you put pressure on the other team and you make them screw it up. And right now, what we've done is we've kind of, you know, truthfully, we've kind of, you know, we've screwed it up a little bit ourselves in critical situations, and you know, that's how you lose football games.